Let's talk Indiana. We have problems.
Project 2025. Many of you have already heard about it. Some of you are just learning about it, but much of it is already underway here in Indiana.
This limited series podcast highlights many elements of Project 2025 and how it impacts Indiana.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Indiana. I am Indiana's own Dana Black, and I got my crew with me today. First up, Mary Noone. How are you today, Mary?
I'm good on this Monday. We had a little thunderstorms roll through, but the sun's shining, so I'm ready to roll today.
And the best voice in the business, Mark Gevaart. How are you doing, my buddy?
Oh, you know, Dana Black, you always butter me up, and I'm there for it every time. Thank you very much. Hey, on a Monday, though, I'm really excited about the announcements that are coming this week on a VP, but let's put that off until we actually hear the official announcement. But I'm excited. It's going to be another great week. Last week was good. Let's make it better.
Well, one thing is for certain, Mark, I talk too much to lie, so I ain't buttering you up. I'm telling the truth.
Thank you.
You know, there's always a lot going on in the news. You know, last week, or the first week, we talked about education. Mary, you were talking to us today about a recall that happened because of regulations and because of Project 2025's desire to get rid of so many departments that safeguard humanity. Tell us about that story.
Yeah, last week it struck me when I was reading in the news this week that we all have these things happen. There was 7 million pounds of deli meat and boar's head was recalled. And we are all thinking about kids going back to school, making those school lunches. Lo and behold, the FDA comes under the Health and Human Services. Ching, ching. That is one of the area that they want to gut and take away. So I think it just shows you that these government agencies are there for the well-being of all of us, and it really impacts our children. With kids going back to school, it really struck me because as a mom, ham and cheese, cut the crust off. That was my daughter's lunch for I don't know how long, right up to high school. She was a swimmer. I had to pack 2 because she was that kind of athlete. But yeah, that really struck me because we're not going to have those safeguards for our children. And there was a lot of hospitalizations, and I was really surprised the numbers they show of how many people actually get food poisoning and what this protects. This agency protects people from that exact mishap.
Right. And let's not forget, those are the same folks that make sure that there's an expiration date on your milk, any of the foods you eat. They're the ones that oversee that. Now, you always see someone saying, oh, well, that's just an arbitrary number. Well, these are the things that come from that. You have to be able to have these things there. It's consumer protection. If we're going to lose regulations, consumer protection shouldn't be the first thing we lose, but that's where they're headed.
Well, and if we do lose that, we're going to end up losing lives, and there are going to be people who are upset and sad and miserable and angry and want someone to pay. But the people that need to pay are the people that they voted for. They're going to be the people that they have been supporting. And these folks have always worked to end regulation so that businesses can run roughshod over humanity. And it's only when we and the government hold those folks accountable that we are safe.
Right.
I've had food poisoning, and that is not a fun thing.
Raise your hand. Oh my God.
And if you have a kid with food poisoning,
I don't even
understand.
You're so helpless. You're helpless as a person, a parent. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
what strikes me about this one is it affects 13 states. It goes back to what we were talking about before, is that common theme of community doing things together, that collective, looking out for each other. And when nobody can safeguard this in your own state. When you've got that umbrella of this organization, it's safeguarding everybody. It hit 13 different states. A state agency cannot oversee something like this happening.
No, absolutely not.
True.
Absolutely
Very
not.
true.
And with them trying to get rid of, with the Project 2025 agenda, to get rid of civil servants and career government employees who they've been nonpartisan, technically, right? Nonpartisan in their role. They literally are saying they're going to parse out who voted for who or who donated to who, to scare people, right? It's a scare tactic. It's McCarthyism, right? But also they're going to parse them out and get rid of them. And so someone, and replace them with people who are lackeys. Right.
There's no knowledge base there with someone coming in. They would have no background to it at all. You could have someone that, not faulting your Bachelor of Science in some whatever, but it doesn't pertain to food and the science of that. And there's so many things that go on with that. You can't just plug in Joe because Joe's your friend and Joe contributed to your campaign.
Well, they try to do that. They're trying to do that with education. Think about it. They're saying that anybody can, here in Indiana, anybody can go teach as long as they got a degree.
Yeah.
Without taking any teacher training, not early childhood development, how
There's
to
a whole background check lost.
Yeah,
Yes.
hello.
Yeah.
Let's not even talk about that part.
You know,
Right.
for me, it's the look under the hood again, because what they're trying to do is you've heard them say, we got to get rid of funding and the budget. It's it's overextended. And they're covering this up by, quote, reclassifying workers on what they call the Schedule F. And by doing that, they're taking away people's protections of what entity and agencies they can work in the government. So they're going around it, claiming that they're cutting the budget and taking out the fat. In reality, they're allowing people, their career professionals, to not have that protection of being a career professional in the department, the Secretary of State's department, in the foreign offices that we have around the world. I mean, that's long-standing relationships that we saw. I mean, look what happened. Look what Biden did this weekend with getting those prisoners released.
Oh my gosh.
About international know-how and the history of all the countries and what matters to the country. That is a group effort, hands off to Biden. That's because NATO's strong, our relations strong. We understand the wants and desires of other countries. And that's not just a one-person lift. That is a collective effort. But Biden led the charge on that, and we have to give him a shout out for that.
That is a huge
Great
win.
call.
That is a huge win for the Biden administration. That's a huge win for Vice President Harris as she is on this campaign trail. And it is a huge blow to the Orange Menace, because you remember what he said? If I was president, I would have had them home. Well, guess what? Biden got him home. But the worst part about it was when he, 45, the Orange Menace, said, I congratulate Putin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What kind of...
There's money in that. That's why he did it.
Yeah.
What kind of mess is that? This is
How American is that?
Exactly.
I still don't get that.
Yeah. Well, did you see the news this morning? The Republicans for Harris, the calls are coming around where we had the black woman for Harris, we had white women for Harris, we had the dudes for Harris. Well, they rolled out a Republican for Harris because there are some folks across the aisle that realize democracy is much more important than party affiliation. I got an email this morning too that the other one that just came around was elders for Harris.
I love it.
Listen to your grandma, listen to your grandfather on this. We know what's at stake. And I said, that's really good. That's really good.
The best yard sign.
I saw deadheads for Harris last week too. Right on.
Yeah. I've seen people with
talk
disabilities.
about niche marketing. I love it.
There was labor for Harris. There was disabilities for Harris. I love it. It's the coalition of everybody coming together, that this is a collective. But the best yard sign that I've seen so far was, yes, I'm a Republican, but I'm no fool. I'm voting for Kamala Harris.
Yep. Yeah,
wow, that's great. That says a lot on a sign. You have to slow some traffic down with that thing.
Like, what? But this is where we are. People are like, no, granted, we still have that segment of our society that think they want a strong man to tell them what to do with their lives. They don't know that it's going to be like that. They don't know that they're going to be hurting. Honestly, we talked about it in the first segment. The folks over in Russia are not happy. They're not, Navalny
they're not happy and hungry.
Right. Well, let's hope that our kids aren't going hungry. And if they are hungry, they're not eating bad boar's head meat.
Yeah.
Way to wrap that around. Nice. That was smooth.
I try. I do my best. I do my best.
Oh, you're killing it. It's great. For a Monday, you're sharp.
Oh, my goodness. But Mary, you got all the talking points today. Go ahead. You had another talking point that you wanted us to dive into before we get into the Project 2025 discussion.
Yeah, there's a couple things. Education, we talked about education. That's a common thread, big concern for Hoosiers. And there's two things I wanted to bring up. One was, if you don't follow him, Josh Cohen, he's wrote a really phenomenal book on privateering education and billionaires and their threat to public education. But he just did a study. He came out with a study, and they call this cream skimming. And what that means is, it basically, these private schools just taking the creme de la creme, the best students. But the study also focused it on Indiana because we have so many vouchers in our system, but are they also pushing out students that they feel don't meet their quote criteria? And there was no evidence that the voucher program here, the private schools are just picking the best stuff. But there is a substantial amount of evidence that these private schools and these voucher programs, these charter schools, if students aren't meeting their quote standards, they are asking them to leave.
Wow. So they get to keep the public money, huh?
Well, they already been paid for the year for that student. So if that student leaves at semester break, absolutely, they're paid for the full year. Sure.
Well, here's the thing. They're pushing out the lower achieving students because it messes with their numbers too.
Yeah, they can't have it.
Instead of
Yep.
actually helping the student, which is what
You
the
got
school
it.
is supposed to do.
Right, right. So it goes back to my whole thesis that when people say charter schools are public schools, if it's not open to everybody, it is not a public school.
Absolutely.
So true. Yeah.
And here we are. We're supposed to be churning out the next generation of great leaders, but in Indiana, we just want the next generation of great workers.
Yeah, which goes back to everybody. Did you see, Mark? Did you see the universities that came out? They were up in arms about the high school diploma, whether or not this high school diploma will meet the standards of entry into the universities here in Indiana, Purdue. IU, Southern Indiana came out with it. It was pretty fascinating that the presidents are saying, pause, you didn't ask us about this diploma, and it looks like this criteria you're setting up doesn't meet our standards, so we won't be able to accept these students.
Purdue was the first to come out.
I was
Purdue,
like,
yeah.
you know what gets me about this? Let's be honest. You're hearing this from a lot of voters, accountability and transparency. There was no educators in the room when they decided this. There was no parents in the room. They didn't invite university professionals and whatnot. So here you are rolling out a new standard of diploma, and those folks were not in the room, the high level stakeholders. And secondly, it was the diploma that we have wasn't scheduled to be sunset until 2028. And I beg the question, why did they move it forward so quickly?
Because they need more workers in the workforce, and you might as well get 14-year-olds that you can underpay.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm waiting for the AFL-CIO of the state here to put out something on it too, but it affects the apprenticeship program too, and people coming out of high school and needing a certain level GPA and or abilities in math and or sciences before they go into this trade, and they're ready to continue to do this. They haven't really noticed an impact yet, but I tell you, having some loose conversations, it's out there. They just haven't put anything out on it yet, but I guarantee they're going to be right there with the universities in the same thinking.
So, yeah, they even had public feedback on this. It gave people an opportunity to share their thoughts on this particular diploma. And Representative Garcia Wilburn, who is an educator and a researcher, had, like, I think, hands down, one of the best responses in this public meeting. Y'all take a listen.
As a final piece of feedback, I would like to ask that you share more of the peer-reviewed research that led you to the large changes in this plan, such as elimination of classic high school standbys like world history and health and economics. Right now, the proposal only links to other websites, which as a researcher, I view as an insufficient rationale for these changes. My office has reached out to the Department of Education twice to receive additional research, yet we have received no response. Your lack of response is indeed a response. Please do not let the feedback provided to you by countless Hoosiers fall upon deaf ears. Thank you.
So she basically calls him out, y'all. She says,
right.
I'm a researcher. I literally click on a link and it takes me to another link. Where's your academically, based research and academic, what do you call it? I'm not an academic, so
qualifications. Where's your qualitative and quantitative analysis of the situation?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it almost sounds like they just pulled these diplomas out their tail, right, and just said, "This is what we're going to do, so that we can the race to the bottom." I guess that's what it is.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Peer research. That's what I'm saying. There's no peer research.
You got it. She nailed it when she said, "Your lack of response is a response." Her office reached out twice to get further information, to back up what they're putting out there, and there was no response. This is something that's been already decided, and we're being pawns, if you ask me. That's my prediction. I hope it doesn't come to that. But the fact that the second iteration is being presented August 14th, if you ask me, when you're taking such an important document, 2 weeks to sift through all the feedback and the research and to reiterate, that's not enough time. To me, the decision's already decided, and we're just waiting to see what it looks like.
Well,
right. Looking at Chalkbeat, Indiana, they also say this new draft diploma requirements are expected at this state board meeting here, like you were talking about here in August. And the state board must adopt a new diploma requirement by the end of the year. Now, previously, they wanted this plan to happen earlier in the year. It's been pushed back with now not any reasons why. I think they're trying to make it look like they care. I'm not quite sure, but it's just frustrating to watch this too. So I always recommend Chalk Beat, and there's a specific spot for Indiana, and they talk about, we got some great reporting going on in there too.
And mind you, this is from people who swear up and down they want to protect our children. They want to protect our future, but they don't even want them to be able to read, write, and have a free thinking mind and with arts and all the other things. They just want them to punch a clock, punch in, punch out, 6 days a week and all, and make babies that you ain't going to be able to afford.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to our saying. One of my things is you have to have someone running in every seat of the bus in Indiana.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
have to have people running in our state house because that's where these decisions are made. Folks really think it's the federal level, but no, the federal level is the umbrella. This is the decisions that happen that hit us home.
And the RNC in the state here already knows that they're going to pit each person against each other, whether it's a group, whether it's male versus female, it's a race versus race. I don't care how they do it, but they want to make sure that the poor folks find out that something's being stolen from someone who's even more poor than they are. That's who you should fight against, not the people who are donating to them at the RNC and the GOP level here. It's pretty crazy to watch, but this continues, and these reps go back to their districts and go, yeah, we didn't decide that. That happened somewhere else, some nefarious other place, but they're the ones that made the call, and just they want to hide that information from you. Here is a great example of that.
The deep state.
The deep state.
Thank you.
The deep state.
Well, you know what? They are the deep state because they're the ones in power.
Exactly. They're the ones in power.
The projection continues.
But because we have defunded public education for a generation, they have a bunch of people out here who are easily duped. And I don't mean no disrespect to the humans, but they are now easily duped. They don't know how to look up information. They don't know how to do research. I had somebody one time tell me I was internet smart. I said, they thought they were trying to offend me because I used the internet to look up information. But before the internet, there was the encyclopedia smart. Right. There was the dictionary smart. There was the thesaurus smart. What's the difference?
I know. And I'm a proud father who taught the card catalog at an early age in our house, and that still stands today.
Absolutely. You got your information from someplace, right? Yep. With peer-reviewed research papers online, you can see those things.
Understand that process. Yep. That's a great tool to teach. Yep. Yes.
Yep. Okay, that's a lot. That's a mouthful, guys. We really.
I'm glad you brought up education. Thank you again.
Well, you know what?
That seems to be from first, second, and third show. We still talk about education.
Exactly. It's the root to everything. If you don't have an educated society, everything else shuts down. Idiocracy. Did y'all see the movie?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, we're living it.
Let's go on and talk about religiosity too. So we can talk about that.
Buckle up, folks. Here we go.
Man, we are living
because end to abortion medication is one of the key factors of Project 2025 and Agenda 47. Those two are tied, and their big brother is the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, wow. I think, Mark, you hit it the nail on the head this week. We all saw Trump trying to separate himself from Project 2025. Yeah. Oh, it's not me. And he, claimed he's firing the head of the Heritage Foundation. Come on, if you have that kind of pull to fire the head of the Heritage Foundation, did I not see their banners all over the place during the convention? And they were one of the major sponsors.
Yes, they were.
Draw a direct line from how many officials in your administration. I think there was 14 who have been partaking in the drafting of this. The list goes on and on and on.
JD Vance wrote the foreword. Your vice president, presidential pick, JD Vance, wrote the foreword. So, bro, you cannot distance yourself from this nonsense. It's yours. You own it. You thought it would be okay, cool that they wrote that mess down. Because you thought you were going to win.
Exactly. I go back to Kamala Harris looking at the American Federation of Teachers president, Randy Weingarten, going, can you believe they wrote this down?
Yeah.
She was stunned by that too. Randy waved her hand and said, absolutely, this is crazy. What's going to happen to them if we can win, is they're going to regret that they ever put this out. But the key to it is we have an opportunity to talk about it. That's what's beautiful about it.
And we've been watching, since the Dobbs decision, everything negative that we said would happen if Roe v. Wade was not a protection for women in our nation would happen. And we've watched it. We have watched 10-year-old little girls. First of all, never mind, I ain't gonna talk about rape culture. I just ain't gonna do it. But first of all, the fact that they were basically saying this 10-year-old little girl was going to have her body mutilated to have a baby at 10. Your body is not fully formed to give birth.
Nope.
These guys, and they want to say it's God's will. No, it wasn't God's will for that child to be violated like that. Don't play.
No,
don't give me that. Don't give me that. But this is where we are. And Project 2025 wants to do everything it can from a national, not just a state by state basis, but they want to shut down abortion all over our country.
Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. It is already in there. And unfortunately in Indiana, we are seeing the impact across the board. You know what's ironic about this is when the Our Choice Coalition did their survey across Indiana, and they've made this information public, 64% of folks in Indiana, Hoosiers, believe we should have access to abortion and healthcare altogether. And additionally, 78% feel we should let the citizens decide and bring it to a ballot initiative.
Yeah. But we got to change the Constitution to have ballot initiatives. And that's not ever happening as long as Republicans have a supermajority. In fact, if they have a majority, because it takes
any majority, right?
It takes two sessions. It takes two sessions, back-to-back sessions.
But it also just tells you that the representatives that are sitting down in Indianapolis are not thinking or asking or communicating about the people and what our voice is and what matters to the folks here and how it impacts us.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. That's the truth. If the surveys are showing it, that Hoosiers do not want this law. They want a choice. They're not being given their choice. And this is what happens when you have gerrymandered and uncontested seats. Because I will say, the abortion bill that happened in 2022, Susan Glick, Senate seat 13, she was one of the sponsors. She was one of the key sponsors. She went unopposed in 2020, and currently she's going unopposed right now in 2024. They put her up there. They put her name on the bill for a reason.
Yeah, they did.
Yep. Wendy McNamara down in 76. We saw her as a co-sponsor. Catherine Reinbach ran against her. Thank you very much, Catherine. Unfortunately, she wasn't successful, but nobody's running against her again right now in 2024. Joanne King, who is the other sponsor, and nobody's running against her right now in 2024. So they're just getting away with this.
And
they pick women. They put women out front to try and say, "I want to this is a value."
I was hoping you were going to say that.
I was about to jump in and say it myself. I think we're all thinking the exact same thing.
Right.
They use women to push their misogynistic and sexist policies. They use black people to push their racist agenda. They use Hispanics to push their racist agenda. They find these pawns all over the place. You know what I'm saying?
There's money involved. There's campaign money involved.
Absolutely.
Trust me. Yeah.
Absolutely. I remind people all the time, and I'm wrapping this around because oppression is oppression. It's not an oppression Olympics. Once oppression is there, it's there, right? In order for slavery to have the longevity that it had and for it to even begin, there had to be enablers, right? Mm-hmm. There had to be African enablers, and unfortunately there were. But once
because they could make money on moving people to a boat to get them over here.
They could get weapons, or they could get whatever else it was. So they were enablers. There are women who are enablers to this male misogyny and controlling the behavior of everybody else. They are enablers, and I'm sorry. I couldn't be no pawn like that. You're not finna use me like that, and not unless I'm getting something out of it. Then we're using each other.
Yeah. Well, I certainly hope that their daughters and granddaughters call them out eventually. I feel that's coming. I'm a fan of the idea, and this is in my head. I'm sorry, but I'll just drop this right now. Jim Banks has a wife and 3 daughters and said Trump is the worst pick ever, and then turned around to be nothing but Trump now and is on that Trump train forever.
Because they soft.
His daughter, I know, but my feeling is that his daughters are going to come to an age and realize what a jerk their father's been through this whole thing and the things he's done and undone for America. No matter what they're indoctrinating at their house, this has got to change, and I think it will. But let's also say this, as I've got this subject of Banks, his wife works for the Heritage Foundation too, on some arm, on some pathway too. So there's always a tie in there somewhere. That's why you live in West Virginia in a nice big house, that you don't live in Columbia City in your district anymore. But you do still have that for your home address.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you need that.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, Dana, you hit the nail on the head, and that's why the White Woman for Harris call was happening, because why do these women put up proximity to power? It doesn't affect me.
Yes.
So the theme
I'll
of
be
that
safe.
Call, that theme of that call was we need to realize that in order for Kamala Harris and other women around this country to feel safe and heard, we need to rethink how we vote and who we vote for. And that was the theme of the call, that we have to stand together as a sisterhood and support Kamala Harris for that exact reason.
I love
Which is
that.
why it's going across party lines now too.
Absolutely. But I'll be honest with you, the call that really got me, honestly, were the white dudes for Kamala, because at least there's a relationship that an intersectionality between white women and Kamala. There's a there's a relationship between Black women, even queers. Right. We know that there's a relationship there.
Absolutely.
And to have white men just come out and say, and raise a boatload of money in minutes.
4 million. Yeah.
Now, can I just mention real quick the disparity, the income disparity, how it took an hour and a half for Black women to raise $1.5 million, and it took 17 minutes for white men to raise 4 million. I need y'all to understand that there's a story to tell there. There's a story to tell there about income disparity. White women were able to raise, significantly more because of the wealth gap. But that's a whole nother story for another book. But I love that call because as women of color, we are often overlooked, and we were often considered to be at the bottom of the social totem pole, and we are, often not given an opportunity to succeed. Or if we are given the opportunity to succeed, we are called the DEI hire, which is ridiculous, which is offensive in so many ways, because what makes you think I'm not more qualified than you because I'm a person of color, right? But that call made me happy because you could hear them be full-throated in their support for Kamala, because it's about our democracy and not about the things that make us different.
Yeah. And that call was, I wasn't on the dudes call, but I was the white one for Harris call. And I walked away feeling like we're not going to make the same mistake we did with Hillary Clinton in 2016. Not going to make the same mistake. And when I came back and I was talking to Roy about it, he's like, what do you mean by that? I said, I remember seeing Hillary because we took the girls, my daughter was in high school, and some of her friends and some of my other girlfriends to come see Hillary when she came to Boston. It was the big night out. We spent the money on the tickets up front and close, and we were so juiced. And the conversation was, wow, who was that just on stage? Why didn't we see that Hillary on the campaign trail?
Yeah.
And the reason for that is, if you think about it, and everybody had talked about it afterwards, is because she was so used to conforming and working in a man's world that she kind of lost her sense of self and the way she was projecting. And when we needed her to show us who she was in the forefront of running for a presidential election, we really didn't see that until afterwards. So now what we're saying to Kamala Harris is, be yourself. We've got you. We're right behind you.
And don't pick a dry ass Tim Kaine either.
No.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well said. I still go back to knowing Hispanic males, Black males that I spoke to at the time in 2015 said, and 16, I don't want a woman. I don't want a woman. That was a misogynist statement and feeling by them, by a large group in that age group of the 50s and 60-year-olds, like, I don't want a woman. So it's a different time now. We've moved ahead that many years. So I see it now as a whole different ballgame, but she's a different type of person who brings a different personality to it too. So that's in a more empowering thing. I just think about the drag queens and everybody else in the queer community who's just like, hell yes, let's go. It's just so I didn't see Hillary get that, although she had it to some degree. It's just more so now. It's just elevated, and that's what's exciting too.
Well, and then there's always someone who has to put the cracks in the ceiling, right? I mean, think about it. Shirley Chisholm put some cracks in it.
Absolutely.
And then Hillary came along and put some more cracks in it. And so now I believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is just going to bust straight through the roof, and the roof is on fire.
Well, you know what? I want to read a quote that, oh my God, I want to blank out. Who's the head of Moms Demand Action? Shannon Watts.
Yes.
Shannon Watts. Your whiteness will not save you for what the patriarch has in mind for you. Project 2025.
Yeah, that's real talk right there. That's real talk.
Right there.
That's real talk.
Lie.
That is real talk.
Don't avoid that. That's real deal. Absolutely.
Well, and again, if you can't, what greater freedom is there in the world than body autonomy? Body autonomy and freedom to make choices about your own body should have more value than property you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you
And
know,
generationally, it's gone on. This fight continues. Just think of the lady who was standing in 2017 with a sign and one of those marches in DC that said, I fought for this shit in the 70s.
I did
Why am
this
I doing
already.
this
Why am I
again?
doing it
I
again?
did this
Yeah.
already.
I did this
Well,
already.
you know what? That's a really good question. So we have to ask ourselves when you dive into this, why is abortion such a salient issue? Why are we fighting about it again? And don't be fooled because Project 2025, whether he says it doesn't exist or I'm departing himself from the Trump, the orange man is departing himself from not. Because right in it, I'm going to read page 450. The secretary should pursue a robust agenda to protect the fundamental right to life, protect conscious rights, and uphold bodily integrity rooted in biological realities, not ideology. It goes on. Our God-given individual rights to live freely against a woke threat. A woke threat. Today, the left is threatening the tax-exempt state of churches and charities that rejects woke's progressivism. Maintaining a biological base, social science reinforces definition of marriage and family. It's right there. They wanted to define what marriage and family is, and the way and the channel to do that is through when and where and how children come into this world.
That is insane.
Yeah.
First of all,
That is.
it drives me nuts when people swear up and down that this was a Christian nation. Again, I'm not dissing nobody's faith and what they believe in, but the freedom of religion means we're not establishing any type of religion. Okay.
Freedom from religion, if that was your choose.
Exactly, exactly. And so these people who swear that they are constitutionalists are messing it all up by using religion to make policy. And that they're using religion and they're ignoring other religions. Here in Indiana, the debate was on when the Jewish community said, hey, we don't believe that life begins until the child exits the womb.
There you go, first breath.
So as a Jewish community, you are violating my religious tenets by saying that I am not allowed to have an abortion up to how many weeks people are,
Right.
And they're saying you're violating my religion. And we're talking about the Jewish community. We're not talking about a smaller sect of Hinduism.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We're talking about probably the second most influential religion in these United States. When they said you were violating us, they were like, yeah, we don't care.
Yeah. Well, when you dive deeper into it, as we said, the reason why we just started this podcast was to show that things are already happening in Project 2025 in the red states across the country.
Absolutely.
It's not
Especially here. Yeah.
It is here. And we have that evidence down in Alabama when they, abortion. Next, they are coming for IVF and birth control. Make no mistake, they are. Down there, and here's the clue, the thread that's coming together. My colleague back in Massachusetts interviewed a professor. It really shed some light for me. Let me read this to you, and then I'm going to listen to a blurb, and I think it'll all come together for the audience. This is the Chief Justice that made the decision to ban IVF. And for 2 weeks, I believe it was on hold till it went to their legislature. The Chief Justice of the court that rendered the decision, his name was Thomas Parker, recently expressed his support for the Seven Mountains Mandate. And I'm sure people in the audience are like, what is the Seven Mountains Mandate? As explained, the Seven Mountain Mandate is a quasi-biblical blueprint for theology. This asserts that the Christians must impose fundamental values on American society by conquering, quote, the seven mountains of cultural influence in the U.S. That includes government, education, media, religion, family, business, and entertainment. And I guarantee as I list that list, we know where the media control came from, Fox News, the education, the vouchers they're trying to, religion and family through abortion. I mean, the list goes on. But let me have you listen to this segment from Mark Taylor. And we'll drop the full episode in after the podcast, but take a listen to what this Seven Mountains Mandate is, and we'll catch you guys on the other side.
It's a world that believes in prophecy. It's a world that believes that there are modern prophets, that there are people who are endowed with a gift, there are Christians who are endowed with a gift of prophecy, that God speaks directly to them. That they believe that there really are demons. They believe that there are even hierarchies of demons that are exercising influence on our world. And so they participate in what they would call spiritual warfare, where they pray or they have other practices, or they prophesy or speak against these demons that they would say have power in society. And so in the Seven Mountains vision, the tops of every one of those mountains, right? The top of the government mountain, the top of the family mountain, the top of the education mountain is either controlled by Satan and demons, or it's controlled by Christians and the kingdom of God. And so the idea of the Seven Mountain Mandate is the mandate is for Christians to claim their mountain, for Christians to go and conquer the tops of every one of those mountains through spiritual warfare, but also through real world activity, where they go into government, they go into education and try to attain as much influence in that area as possible and claim the top of the mountain, take over the high places so that Christian influence will flow down into the rest of the society.
There it is.
Wow. Yeah, those are details. And that's what that goes back to. We had our constitutionalists will tell you that we had a freedom of religion. That's what this country was based on. You have the freedom to do whatever your religion is. Yet here we are. We've grown to this theocracy.
And you have
Crazy.
to, and that's the thing about cults and not spiritual uplift, but let me control things.
It's control.
This is if your religion tells you, or the way you believe, because that's what I'm saying. I'm not going to say it's a religion. The way you believe thinks that it is imperative for you to control the existence of other humans. Then that ain't a good thing, because you wouldn't want anybody controlling you like that.
That's slavery in a matter of speaking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like if you told these people, you know what, the way that you're practicing Christianity is wrong, they will be at your house with their AK-47s or AR-15s or whatever else. You know what I'm saying? They would be there.
All of a sudden, you're the top of the mountain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I kind of believe we fought the revolution after that. You know, the North Brit,
right.
Lexington and Concord, shot heard around the world. Wasn't that?
Thank you, history.
They took history out, honey. They took history out. They're not teaching the kids history no more. They don't even know who Crispus Attucks is. Come on.
Oh my gosh.
They don't know what the Boston Massacre was.
They don't know. They don't know. They don't know what the Tea Party was. They thought it was something that happened after Obama came into office.
Well, what they do know is they remember the Comstock Act,
Yeah,
because
they
they
do.
want to criminalize mailing of abortion medication, as they're calling it, mail order abortions, which that's going to go to birth control next, or someone maybe being a drug trafficker because they carried it across state lines to try and help someone else out. So these are the things they want to do. They're going to use those things in history that fit their narrative today. But that's what they're going to forget, is the things that are where we started, what our roots were. But in this case, I just was amazed when I got into the details of Comstock Act and what it is and how they're going to criminalize that and make sure that people are going to go to jail and legitimately have a case against them. But that starts with the FDA top changing as well, too.
Mark, but before we go further, break down the Comstock Act, because from what I understand, it's like 151 years old, and it's like an anti-obscenity law or something crazy. Break it down for us.
Started out as anti-obscenity, and then when it came to Prohibition era, it was liquor related, and Comstock Act couldn't allow you to move. The bootleggers were held under that. Then they turned around and it's forgotten about. But now they're going to say we're going to criminalize the mailing, the U.S. mailing, and the U.S. mail wasn't around when Comstock Act was soon after that, but it wasn't as large as it is now. Now they're going to say you're going to be held by the postmaster is now going to be the law on this case and take you to court, and they have an open and shut case saying this person mailed this from here to here. They mailed it from Arizona to Indiana, and guess what? The person in Arizona is going to jail, and so is the one in Indiana that received it. They're going to take both ends of it. So don't think it's not there. It's big. It's a real big operation, and this is part of their take the heads of all these departments and put someone in charge like that too. I mean, Louis DeJoy is our current U.S. postmaster.
And
there's no reason to think
he has a job is still.
That's I'm hoping for some change, but the Board of Governors and the setup of that, they knew what they were doing when they put him in there and how the years would go by and how he could stay there and be protected. And so, I mean, they had a plan, and let's not think they don't have a plan. Everything we're talking about today is we're trying to peel back and show you the plan so you understand this a little bit better, but goes back to what we're talking about with the Comstock Act. They definitely want to criminalize anything that you're going to do that has something to do with birth control and or abortion and abortion pills. So getting crazy already.
What I find even more interesting is their desire to obstruct IVF. Here we are trying to, you're telling us you want us to have more babies in one breath, right? But for those who is, as JD Vance calls, childless cat ladies, you know, those that want to try to have kids and are using science, because see, they want to go back to the 1870s to get a law to prevent birth control, but we want to go forward with IVF and say, hey, there's alternative ways to give birth or have a baby. They want to shut that down too. I think that might be twofold, but talk about, Mary, why they are coming after IVF so much.
Well, you know, there's a couple reasons for that. You know, first of all, you're going back to the Seven Mountains Mandate and the Christian nationalism and how you control. If you think about it, how many people do I know who have conceived their children through IVF? And what they're saying, what in their religious belief is, if you are not ready for a child, then you need to go back and repent. You need to go fix yourselves. God's not ready for you to be the vehicle to bring children into this world. Okay. So they've got to figure it out a way to control people so not to use this advance of sciences, right? So you have to make it a sin so people feel like I better not do that. And what they're doing is the next step forward is infertility is a byproduct of a sin entering the world. So you, like I said, you have to go back and, you know, clean up. The other thing, what they're saying is IVF and surrogate motherhood is immoral. So again, the thread, they're going after our gay and LGBTQ communities so they cannot have children. Again, a control mechanism. Yeah. So you've got to figure out a way to they're othering each other. We're othering each other and how you decide to start and when to start to have your family. So you've got to figure out a control mechanism, and religion is becoming that avenue to implant these ideas. If that's how you believe, if that's how you want to have your family, if you do not want to use contraceptive, if you do not want to try IVF, because if that's your belief, great. But I don't understand. It's not in my Constitution. It's not in the Constitution that was signed in Philadelphia that says you get to decide what happens to my body.
Exactly. Well, I already knew that it was about making sure that queers don't have no more babies. Like, because remember they said, well, you're queer, you won't even have a kid. Like, huh? I'm still a chick, and biology, still biology. I can have a kid, you know.
Yep.
But that also limits your ability to adopt too. Yes. So they love to talk about how the policies also want to push adoption, but there's only certain folks who can adopt.
Well, and I forget about the fact that there are over 100,000 young people already in the system. So if there's adoptions, I mean, don't get me wrong, I am an adopted child and I'm very grateful to have been adopted, but there are still so many children in Indiana in the system. So where are all these people adopting the kids?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So they walk around child or parentless, and then when they're 18 years old, they get kicked out of the system with a few $100 in a bag and say good luck.
Yeah.
But hey, you know,
that's the common thing for foster kids and adopted kids to carry their goods in is a trash bag.
Trash bag.
They don't even have suitcase or anything. Their life is in a bag.
And see, today as we're recording this show is my father's birthday. He's now deceased, obviously, but it's August the 5th. My father said I was his Christmas present. My father did not want another child that he had to change diapers. He had the experience. They wanted another kid. They just didn't want to change diapers. I was 18 months old. Usually people want infants.
Yep.
And I got lucky because my dad was like, well, you know what? I done had enough of poopy diapers. Give me somebody that's already potty trained. You know what I'm saying? I got lucky.
You were tearing up the steps at that house probably too, up and down.
Man. So, these people don't understand the impact that they're actually going to have on people's lives. Two of the best parents I have ever met in my life are my best friends, Chris and Noelle. And they have two beautiful daughters. And these kids have everything they could ever want in life. And I know heterosexual couples that can barely feed their kids.
Right.
Not that they're not good parents.
Yep.
But they can't even feed the kids.
That's so true. So true. Yep. But some religious leader will decide who can and cannot do adoption.
I don't. Go ahead, Mary. I'm sorry.
In their world, in this Project 2025 world.
This just is what gets me going is let's talk, the history comes out in me in this because, you've got the Southern Baptists who voted at their conference here in Indianapolis in June. They voted against IVF. Now let's backtrack. Let's go back into the history of England. Let's go overseas when you've got the Church of England. First were they the Church of England, then they were Catholic because the king could not have, his wife, the queen, could not have any children. And in the Catholic religion at the time, you couldn't get divorced. So he's like, oh, snap my fingers. I'm a man. I'm going to decide. I'm going to switch the whole country. I'm going to change religion. And right. I mean, basically that's what happened. Dana, you're laughing, but that's the reality. I am the king. I get to do what I want. So I'll even chop my wife's
to how
head off.
fleeting religion is.
Well, at the point, then you follow through history, and then you've got the Lutheran religion. Nothing against the Lutheran religion, but Lutheran was not liking what the people over here were doing. So come over here, folks, and let's form a religion over here that sets with my values. Great, good, go over here. But what's happening here is you're telling other people what to do. Man is making a decision for women. And that's the construct we're working under here. And that's where we have to step back and ask ourselves, as women, who's going to control our bodies? And how you are going to decide that is through your vote.
And see, Mark, I know you don't have this problem, but most men don't even know how to navigate a woman's body. So why are they trying to tell people what to do with it?
I got 40 years experience with a great partner.
Right? I mean, and here's the other thing. If as a woman, you are not able to conceive a child because of some sin or whatever nonsense they're saying, then can we please do something about Viagra? Can we put that on the chopping block? Because
that's a no. We cannot talk about that. That's not even on the table. I know.
Can you
I agree.
send it through the mail? How many men get it through the mail?
Let's drop some Comstock Act on that.
I mean, if you're supposed to have a limp wee wee because God said you got to have a limp wee wee, it's time for you to have a limp wee wee. Why do you get to use science to fix your limp wee wee?
Right. And let's remember that that's a drug that was approved by the FDA through rigorous testing before it was done so that it could enhance your health and your well-being. And your
quality of life. It's sometimes it's more than just it's the quality of life. Right.
Well, I think you just nailed the nail on the head there, Mark. You said that drug was approved by the FDA, and that is the leading argument for metapristone. What they're saying shouldn't be used because it did not go through the proper FDA channels. It is not safe. So all of a sudden, the FDA is okay for this, but it's not okay for that.
Right.
Child, don't tell a man he can't do what he want to do with his body. But girlfriend.
Here it comes. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Your first teachings was from your mama.
Mm-hmm.
When you learn how to breathe from your mama, you learn how to eat from your mama, you learn how to see and listen and understand sensory from your mama. Everything, your first teachings. And the last time I checked, now I understand the transgender conversation. I get that. I get that part and non-binary folks having kids. But the bottom line is if you were in a womb and then you came out of a womb, then the person that was the host was the one that was giving you your first. So how do you take something that was the first and say, you don't even matter now? How do you look your mama in the eye and say, mama, you don't even matter anymore? How do you do that?
These guys have sold themselves on it. They're okay with it. They're doing this. They're going to do this regardless. They couldn't be happier. And it's all white males with a couple of women that they've got out front to say enablers.
Yeah. Yep.
And I don't know if you guys remember the mass shooting that happened in Cincinnati. It might have been Cincinnati or Columbus, Ohio.
Dayton,
was
Ohio.
it Dayton? Okay.
Yes.
And there is a Republican House rep that was pro-gun, big pro-gun lobby guy, all of that, until his daughter was in a mass shooting. And then he began to change his stance. Why do we have to wait until it impacts you directly before you see the errors of your ways? If I can tell you my lived experience, why can't that be enough?
Right.
And they say they asked for that at the education table, asking on this diploma. They actually pretend to care only to front because they're not caring.
They front.
Again, the same situation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And and it's funny, this survey that the ARC Coalition did, they also dove into trying to get an assessment of the folks taking the survey. How much do you actually know about a woman's body in pregnancy and what it needs to, in terms of what abortion is in reference to healthcare? And it came out quite interesting. They're like, some of these questions, they're like, well, I don't know that was part of healthcare.
Could not answer it. Yeah.
Could not answer it. So I think that just tells you we're letting men make decisions for a women's body, and they have no idea what it means. No idea that a woman can get pregnant outside of the womb on a fallopian tube, and that's technically, you want to get technical, it is abortion, but you think a woman should just let that pass. That's why we had such high death rates. We have medical
death rates have gone up in Texas. Both maternal and child infant mortality have gone up since the Texas ban. Not gone down. Gone up. Because you know why? Because you don't have those OBGYNs in spaces where they need to be. Because they're like, if I'm performing an abortion, I'm going to jail or blah, 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 blah. So now you have the highly qualified, trained status practitioners of this saying, I'm not even going to do business here, one. And two, they're having these babies that shouldn't have, they were not viable to begin with. And so, I mean, so everybody's dying. People are, not everybody, obviously, but people are now dying at a higher rate because of the abortion bans.
Yeah. So here we are. We brought it back together to know that Project 2025 and Agenda 47, with the help of the Heritage Foundation, are all tied together, which takes us to think about, hey, November's coming and this election is important. On Saturday of this weekend, I listened to, I find people on TikTok and Twitter and back and forth, and I just listened to this lady who is Corrine Strait, and she gave a great speech about the Indiana Supreme Court justice retention that's on the ballot this fall. All these things I'm worried about, I miss this totally. And the best part about it is when she opens it, she goes, hey, Bluesers, which is her words for Hoosiers. Hey, Bluesers. I'm like sold on that whole title right there.
Love it.
But this little soundbite that I sent to Dana and to Mary, and they both loved it when they heard it, I think it really encapsulates what's at stake here when you talk about the Supreme Court here in the state of Indiana, which the Attorney General has complete control over. Even though he gets chided by them, it's just a shuffle of papers to make it look good. Go ahead and do whatever you want, Todd Rokita, you fool. But it's important to us, but I think we should just give this a quick listen. We can talk about it on the other side.
All right, Bluesers, let's talk about another statewide issue that's going to be on all of our ballots in November: retention of Indiana Supreme Court justices. And thank you so much to Jackie for this suggestion. Indiana uses a hybrid system for the selection of its justices. First, the governor appoints them. They serve 2 years, and then they are up for retention by voters. If they are retained, they go on to serve a 10-year term. Of the 5 justices that sit on Indiana's Supreme Court, 3 of them are up for retention in November. Justices Rush and Massa were appointed by Governor Daniels and have already completed their first 10-year term. Justice Moulter was appointed by Governor Holcomb, and he's up for retention after serving his first 2 years. So if he's retained, he'll go on to serve his first full 10-year term. And if Rush and Massa are retained, they will go on to serve their second full 10-year term. Just like the justices who sit in D.C., the Indiana justices who sit in Indianapolis also have the power to wreak havoc on the lives of Hoosiers. True to form, all 5 justices that sit on Indiana's Supreme Court are Republicans. Following the overturning of Roe v. Wade by the United States Supreme Court, Indiana's total abortion ban went into effect. And when that was challenged, the justices of Indiana's Supreme Court upheld the ban. With very few exceptions, abortion is now illegal in Indiana. The decision handed down by these 5 justices is not representative of the majority of Hoosiers who support the right to abortion in most or all cases. By and large, Hoosiers are supportive of reproductive freedom, bodily autonomy, and medical privacy. Hoosiers, I encourage you to vote no on the retention of these 3 justices in November. And with Jennifer McCormick as our next governor, we will get a much more balanced and representative Indiana Supreme Court.
Wow. So you heard it there first. So I hadn't really had this on my radar as a way to say, hey, what are the justices and who's going to be retained and who's going to get the choice in the future? So obviously Governor McCormick is going to be a key player in this, why we
Yes, I
have
like
to
the way
go
you said
blue.
that.
But the importance to me is that we actually have a voice in this and who serves on that Supreme Court for the state of Indiana. That is big. That's a big change. Every justice there is a Republican. Think about that.
Every,
10
every.
years is a long time to be sitting in that seat. 10
Darn
years.
right.
And that's why
Right.
they've been able to get away with a lot of things, a lot of challenges.
That's
So
their
even-
backstop.
Yeah. So even when, the ACLU or any organization, Common Cause, bring forth any type of challenge to policy that has come out of the State House, it ends up being right back in our laps because the Supreme Court is said. Only time anything positive happens is when you go through the Marion County court system. And you see they was trying to get rid of our judges.
Yeah.
Liberal town.
Yeah, trust me, the hate for Indianapolis is immense.
Oh my God. Well, you know why they hate it? They can't control it.
Right.
Yeah,
They've lost Marion County and they can't
They
hang.
can't, and they can't get it back. Here's the thing. The bottom line is Indiana's money runs through Indianapolis. Trust, know, and believe. There's 92 counties in this state. About 88 of them are welfare counties. Indianapolis Marion County ain't one of them.
Right.
When they talk about, how bad Indianapolis is and how bad Marion County is, there is a food stamp office in every county in this state. There's a FSS. Yes, I have worked I used to work for the state in the IT department, and I would go set up workstations, refresh workstations. I did all of that, right? At the very beginning of my IT career. So there's a food stamp office, FSSA, and other services, of course. That's what we call it, the food stamp office, in every county in the state. So if other counties were so great, there wouldn't be need for those types of services. But guess what? Project 2025 will make it more difficult for people to get the food assistance that they need. Think about that.
We're going to strand all these counties.
Yeah. And when you want to control Indianapolis and we won't let you do it, you write new rules at the State House for us. But you still can't get our money. You still can't.
Right.
And that irks them.
Oh, it drives them crazy. And there's a possibility Indianapolis will soon have either a woman or a person of color as mayor of this city. Right. We're on the trajectory. We're going to be like St. Louis. We're going to be like Atlanta. We're going to be like Philadelphia. Whatever. I mean, not
lots
Pittsburgh.
of examples. Great examples. Yeah.
We're going to eventually have a woman or a person of color leading this city, and Republicans don't want no parts of that. But Indianapolis is also recently a majority minority city now.
Yep. I mean, look at across the state. You've got to look at Fort Wayne, right? We've got a new mayor up at Fort Wayne. You've got a new mayor in Lawrence. You got Deb Whitfield down and then you've got Evansville.
Stephanie Terry.
Yeah.
There you go.
And Angie Deitich up in Michigan City.
Of course, Angie up at the corner.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you look at, you still got the Gary Elkhart, Gary Mayor Milton, and then Elkhart.
Yep.
I can't think of his name right now. I apologize, but we have black folks running cities, and eventually Indianapolis is going to have one. And so they want to, they will change the rules of the game to try to control Marion County to get that money. But luckily, when they were trying to take over our law enforcement agency, and they were trying to, ban being gay. I don't know how you do that. The corporations that help to create that wealth for Marion County said, nah, y'all, pump the brakes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Pump the brakes. Because y'all going to make it real difficult for us to find attract.
We can't retain the quality of people we need to be able to do the things we do.
Yeah. But they don't care. I mean, I think they would rather, and they can prove me wrong. Right. But by their actions, but their policies that they're creating tell me that they don't really care about people being their best selves in Indiana. They just don't.
No.
They care about their people.
Yep.
But not all people.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're lost that true essence of what government service is, right? For the people, collective.
For the community, collective, exactly right.
Doing the collective services that make sense to do together rather than independently. Yeah, they've lost it.
But
Well, I go back to that same thing when someone says, "Well, I have a calling to run for governor." You didn't have a calling to be a city council person. You didn't have a calling to be a county council person, did you? But you all of a sudden want to be the governor? Come on.
Yeah.
see, I struggle with politicians that tell me that God told them to run for office. I struggle with that.
Yeah.
I struggle with that because
It came in a dream.
you think with everything else that the divine has to do that they worried about that House District 52 in Indiana.
Thank you, Data Black. That was
Are
great.
you serious right now?
No, seriously, that's a great way to place it. Yeah.
Are you serious right now?
Right.
I understand that you may have a passion and you may feel like you have a calling, but don't tell me that the divine said out of all the places of all the world, the most omnipotent one has decided that Joe Blow from Kokomo should be the mayor of Kokomo.
Right.
I'm not buying that.
No. Well, you know what? If you look across the statistics, it shows the candidates that are the most successful are those candidates that already been in community, serving their community, doing the work on the ground, getting to know their neighbors, getting to know the needs, the wants, the highs, the lows, and they're the folks that are actually winning these races because they aren't doing it just for themselves because they know there's a need and they're rising to the call.
Absolutely. When I learned so much running for office in 2016 that I don't even understand how I thought I could do it. I didn't know anything in 2016. I took a couple of trainings. One thing I learned.
You were lit. You were on fire. You were ready.
I didn't know nothing, bro. Like
right. I know. But that history allows us to look back and go, what a fool. What was I thinking?
The smartest thing. The smartest thing I told myself.
But you're gonna run again. I know you are.
The smart, Mary knew we're going to get past that. Come on, move past that. The smartest thing I did was take some training so that I could functionally run a campaign.
Right.
But
that's really important. I think it's a role play. Play your role. Be your part of that.
Right.
But
I think you nailed it. Yeah.
But I didn't know the unwritten rules. I didn't know the things.
There are so many to follow, though.
Baby. But that's why it's important. Like you follow Turn Left. You're supposed to, turn left. You follow My Labor Radio, where we're actually interviewing the candidates so that you can get to know who these folks are. That is why you should reach out to people who are in the know and who are networking and ask questions, because many of us don't mind asking those questions. Yeah. And we're often in the room. Like I can't even tell you how many times I'm in a room with Jennifer McCormick. Right. I'm in a room with Jennifer and Terry Gooden and Congressman Carson. I'm in the room all the time.
Dr. McCrae. Right.
Yeah. Having these Destiny Wells. I'm having these regular conversations with these folks. So if I'm privileged enough, and that's my privilege, right? Because I talk a lot. My privilege to get to be in these spaces, then reach out to me and ask me things or how to connect you with a candidate in, Logansport. Right.
Right.
I'll do that.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head because there's two things you have to learn when you run for office. There's the mechanical, and it's actually three. I'm going to step back and say three. It's for yourself, how to be a candidate. Then you have to learn how the campaign apparatus works.
Yeah.
But you also need to know that you cannot run your own campaign. You cannot be sitting behind the computer. You have to know how that apparatus works, but you have to be able to hand it off to competent folks who can run the machine for you. And if you can think you can do both, you're not setting yourself up for success. And then the third piece is the infrastructure around you. The success of a campaign is only as strong as the infrastructure around you. And that includes your local party, the party, and the other entities that hold up the party. And people always ask, why is Indiana so behind? Why is Indiana not like Georgia? And we are putting that infrastructure in place. We are starting to build those other advocacy organizations that can help candidates and boost them up. But as we forge ahead, that's one of the reasons why other states are ahead of us, is we're still building that infrastructure.
But we also have to look at the demographic difference too. I mean, good Lord,
true.
The fact that Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi are still struggling with too many red states when you consider the majority of Black people are still in southern states. So Georgia has a 30% African American population. Indianapolis only has a 30% population. It has a 9% in the entire state. So the same tactics that happened in Georgia are not going to work in Indiana. You can use some of the tools right? Like,
Right.
the campaign that they did to just, target apartment buildings or their rural outreach. But the messaging has got to be different because you're talking to a different demographic. So I wish people would actually stop asking why we aren't like Georgia. We're not. We're not Georgia. We have like an 85% white population. The conversation changes when the demographics change.
Right.
Yeah.
We have to have them see each other see a person who comes to them who's running has to look like them. And it's sad to say.
Yes.
And then to think about it too, I don't think you'll realize how much of a Hispanic and community that we have here in Indiana, and they're not involved in the conversation. And that's why we have to build up our infrastructure because we're not engaging in all the communities that are actually in Indiana and around in our communities and bringing them into the fold and being them part of the conversation.
I'm having great conversations with the Latino caucus. I love talking to those folks over there because they're looking to figure out how to be more engaged. There's been attempts to start an AAPI caucus. It hasn't gone as it hasn't gone. And the reason I asked why because I was like, what's going on? And it's tradition. The way they view what public life is like traditionally. It has nothing to do with their desire to be involved civically. It's how they approach things. This is what someone in the community shared with me. So don't act like Dana Black thinks she know AAPI people. I ask questions. So there's and I love that you even brought that up because the Hispanic community is the largest minority group in America now, right? They just are. Yep. And the beautiful part is we have not, as of right now, we have not allowed white supremacy to drive a wedge between the Black and brown communities. You don't see, majority of Black folks going after brown folks and vice versa. Every now and then you get a Diego Morales, but that's just some crazy talk, or you get a Curtis Hill. That's some crazy talk, right? But for the most part, Black and brown people recognize that, demographically, when it comes to law enforcement, when it comes to education attainment, when it comes to finances, when it comes to our economies, our children's education, we are both those two groups are relatively similar. And so we are working to try to lift each other up in that way.
Yeah. And that's key. That's key. Okay,
well,
folks.
Mark, the judicial thing, and we're talking about the judicial, and I didn't want to leave because the reason why we talked about elections is because if we don't want Project 2025 to take any more root in Indiana, then we have got to find candidates to vote for. It's not just about being mad about this thing. We can do something about it by coalescing around a candidate that will help us.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and finding those candidates too. So I was asked, I talked about this, I think, in our first show. I was asked in May of this year, what's the future for labor? And I said, it's young and it's female. And I'm still living that today too, because I'm seeing people rising to leadership positions in multiple international unions throughout the United States. That's a wonderful thing to see. But you're also finding folks that are in a youthful situation coming forward and bringing what their energy is and taking someone that's a mentor and taking that information and making it work. That's the same thing we have to find in our candidates too. Yeah. There's plenty of mentors out here, but I think Sean Johnson here from Northeast Indiana, SJ told you so. He calls all folks out about age. Stop. Give us that chance. Put us in the room. Let us be there. You allow us in. Hey, the Young Democrats have a crew. We're here, we're there, we're here, we're there. But they all fade away because they don't see anything that inspires them to want to take that next step. So we have to support and nurture that. And that's a key to where our future is too.
You are preaching, baby, because
you are absolutely, absolutely. It's funny because the Young Dems came to us after the Young College Dems came to our organization after the 2020 election because they were not getting the support. They were not getting the support, and they came to us because they wanted to learn how to better engage college Dems around the country, around the state of Indiana. And I said, okay, let's step back. Let's survey them. So we did a robust research project with them. And one of the reasons that I don't know how many tables I sat at in 2022. I don't pay attention to these, those young Democrats. Don't pay attention to them. They don't vote. Well, that's back on us because when we did the research project, you know what came to the forefront for the number one reason why they didn't vote?
Why?
because it's too complex in Indiana, they don't know how to vote in Indiana. And I think that that's back on us. We, as the mentors, are not teaching the young folks the complexities of our voter suppression laws and not helping them out to vote.
Wow.
Okay.
I
So they
didn't know
don't
that.
want to. So they don't want to, but you've got college kids who need to do the absentee ballot, right? And the timetable that get it back. I don't know about you folks, but when in this area where we live, I live in South Bend, in South Bend, but in the Granger area, but my mail does not go to South Bend. It goes to Fort Wayne and then it comes back.
Right.
It's
It
weird.
goes past you and then comes back. Yeah.
Exactly. It goes back. So that's a 7-day cycle if I'm going to mail something locally. Really?
That's
So
crazy.
talk about absentee ballot. Those are the kinds of things that they need to know about in terms of teaching them how to vote absentee and making their vote count. And there's a lot of other things we can dive into. But the fact that they're raising their hand saying, help us, and we as mentors have not taken up that mantle.
I like
We
this.
have work to do, as always.
Absolutely, guys. Wow, this was a fascinating show. You know, we were hitting on abortion, but it ended up being about healthcare and how Project 2025 is really harmful to humans on a massive level. I really do appreciate the depth that you guys bring to this discussion. I mean, you guys are teaching me things, and I get to just opine about how crazy it is, and I love that. And y'all, this is why we're having this conversation. We're talking about the impact of Project 2025 in Indiana, right? We've talked about the laws. We talked about the voter suppression laws. We talked about the dumbing down of our education. We're talking about the near total abortion ban here in Indiana, and the fact that women's lives and young children's lives are at risk. So keep watching. We're going to do another episode. We're going to break down. We haven't quite figured out what the next topic is, but it's going to be a good one. So keep watching. We thank you for listening to us. Mary Noone, give us our marching orders for the week. Our call to action. Our call to action.
Thank you. Call to action for this week is, so what I will say, okay, Jennifer McCormick, she's going to be in the Mishawaka area August 6th. That would be tomorrow night. So if you're in this part of the state and you have not heard Jennifer McCormick, she's hosting a town hall with Heidi Beidinger from 6 to 7 at the Mishawaka Penn Harris Town Library. So you can get to see, we've talked about Jennifer McCormick here before. If you want to ask questions about education, that is going to be your person to touch base with. And then the other challenge call to action that I have for you folks this week is find a local candidate and get involved.
I love it.
Everybody can at least have 2 to 3 hours, one less Netflix, one less, movie this week. Use those times to do a phone bank, do some texting, and meet some great new folks. You'll be surprised. There are more Democrats and more folks that share your values out there than you realize. You just have to make the initiative, and these campaigns will welcome you with open arms.
I love it. I love it. Mark, Gevaart, call to action.
I'm going to go on the heels of what Mary's throwing down, and that is a great way to meet other like-minded people when you join a campaign. The first thing you're going to find out is this candidate's cool as hell, and these people who are supporting him are even greater. Well, that's what's important. That's why the whole thing works, but you have to be involved. It's not going to cost you any money. It's going to cost you your time. Their time is priceless, and that's what a candidate needs. Every campaign needs that. Think that through. Find somebody, listen to a podcast, find some candidate and go, you know what? That's my candidate. I like this person. Let's go find out how I can help. There's an opportunity out there. We want you to step in and try.
And I appreciate that. And I'm going to add a little caveat to everything y'all just said. Get to know the candidate. Don't just decide because what that candidate looks like. They are or are not a good candidate, right? Find out for yourself. Go talk to somebody, okay? Just because they are a demographic doesn't mean they're going to be a great candidate or they're going to be a horrible candidate. And do not tell me I got to support somebody simply because I resemble their demographic. That's not it. Mm-hmm. I need more than that. That's what Republicans do. They tell you that you should support Donaldson because he black.
Right.
Because Kamala just turned black. She was Indian. Now she black.
We didn't even talk about that.
Oh, really?
That's too easy. Let's go deeper than that. Thank you.
Low hanging fruit. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into Let's Talk Indiana. We will have another episode for you next week. You guys have a great one. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening. Click the like and subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode.
Let's Talk Indiana is a joint production of Mary Noone of Campaign Strategy, Mark Gevaart of My Labor Radio, and Indiana's own Dana Black of Turn Left.